already talked Dylan up a little bit in our announcement, but I can't even put into words how excited I am to have him present to us today. He's coming to us from Bozeman, where he's lived for 23 years. He's the founder of Hale Creative Consulting, and he's doing some pretty exciting consulting projects with several big players in our region about diversity, equity, inclusion. And his special twist on it includes the word belonging, which was really intriguing to me. And I'm excited to hear how that plays into the whole scene. So without any further ado, let me introduce Dylan Thornton.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm going to share my screen here. Bear with me. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
That's great. But yeah, thank you to everyone at the Park County Community Foundation for inviting me to speak today, and for everyone who took the time out of their busy schedules to hop on this call and hopefully learn a little bit about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. The purpose of this presentation is to just give a basic overview of the what, why, and hows of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, which I will often refer to as DEIB for short. Sometimes I'll use the term DEI instead. So I tend to use those terms interchangeably. But I'm referring to the same thing for the most part. But so I'll try to give some of the what, why, and how of DEIB work, and share some perspectives that I have on that work and through some of the work that I do, and also how doing this work can lead to some really great opportunities for our organizations and our communities. So feel free to, camera on, off. If it's on, feel free to eat, like whatever you all need to be comfortable here. Just do that. I'm going to cover a lot of stuff, and after this presentation, you will get all the info that you want from this. You'll get the slides, you'll get notes, and you'll get a whole toolkit of resources that references a lot of the really important data that I'll be speaking. So don't feel like you need to take notes the whole time. Like, definitely feel free to jot down things that are really interested to you. You'll get all of it afterwards. So hopefully you can just sit back and listen. And I know that everyone is at a little different point in their DEIB journey as individuals and as organizations. Some people have been doing this work for 30+ years, or some people are just getting started and just interested in learning what it's all about. And so hopefully, no matter where you are in that journey, so to speak, you will be able to take some things away from this presentation. So part of that is, bear with me if some parts are really basic and you already know that, because pretty sure that there are some people on the call who find that info super interesting. If you can save your questions to the end, we'll try to leave 15-20 minutes for Q&A. But if there's something that just cannot wait, go ahead and raise your hand, and hopefully someone from Park County CF can let them in and jump in there. So that is some of my housekeeping stuff. So to get started, my name is Dylan Hale Thornton. I'm the founder of Hale Creative Consulting in Bozeman, Montana, where I have a consultancy that focuses on providing DEI or social responsibility solutions to the outdoor industry and beyond. So a lot of my focus is with outdoor industry related programs and organizations and businesses, which in our area is pretty much everyone, just based on where our communities are and how they operate and how closely connected they are to the outdoor sports and rec. A little bit about how I got to found this. I'm originally from Maine. I have lived in Bozeman for 23 years. I went to Montana State University and graduated with degrees in literature and anthropology. After I graduated, I worked as an archaeologist for a few years, mostly in the Dakotas, doing archaeology survey, trying to protect culturally rich tribal land from oil pipeline development. And at the time, the team that I was working with, we didn't really know that it was for oil pipeline development. Even though the oil companies were present, we didn't exactly know what was going on. So I did that for a few years. That really evolved as, field work by day. And then I ended up mediating conflict essentially between oil developers and tribal agencies in the evening. And that's when I really got a sense to some of those issues that were going on in our region. After a few years of doing that, I totally withdrew from that field, basically because it was really stressful and I just wanted to spend a little more time closer to home here in Bozeman. So I started working in the construction industry and immediately fell into this role of advocating for Spanish-speaking migrant workers who made up the majority of all the labor in these construction projects that I was involved with. And so that wasn't a formal role, that was just a major interest of mine. I also stayed really active with nonprofits in the community, a special nonprofit supporting tribal communities. I have a 14-year-old daughter, and I was really active in volunteering for all her sports and rec programs that she was lucky enough to be involved with. I did a lot of volunteer work for the schools. And another part about me is that I've been in the ski industry. I've been a ski industry professional for 25 years. And so for the last 15 years, I've worked at the Yellowstone Club in the wintertime as a ski instructor and ski guide. Now, about 5 years ago, I was trying to figure out how I wanted to do something different. I wanted to be more involved in supporting my community. So I reached out to some members of the YC that I had become friends with, and they immediately pulled me into these social responsibility projects that they were working on their larger foundations across the country. And before I knew it, I was just consulting. It was just like this natural progression. But I didn't dive into forming a consultancy formally. Instead, what I did was I ended up getting a job with the Yellowstone Club Community Foundation about 4 years ago. And I worked as an outreach manager for the YCCF. And I was really trying to help the YCCF diversify their support into the community by supporting some programs and organizations and interests that they hadn't really engaged with yet. So like one of the first things I did there was help support the American Indian Council of Montana State University and their year-long events and funding the powwow. Also things like the World Language Initiative BELLA program, which offered summer programs for youth from the Spanish-speaking community that lived in Bozeman. They were fun summer camps that offered an English language learning component. So started doing things like that. I was also doing these other projects that I'd been working on for a few years. And then a couple of years ago, I decided to step off and primarily work as a consultant because everything came together, the opportunity was there. So really just a year and a half ago is where I formally dove into creating Hale Creative Consulting and primarily working as a DEI consultant. So my business is new, but my involvement in the topics are not. Essentially, I've been doing this my whole life. And in addition to that, if you see this slide, there are the old time photos. I come from a long line of civil rights pioneers. essentially, going all the way back to the Revolutionary War. And for 5 or 6 generations, I am like the next in line to do this work. And I hadn't even realized it until I fell into this role. And then it hit me like a ton of bricks. It gives me goosebumps just thinking about it, that it was, it's in my ancestry. And so on that note, we had this little convo while we were waiting for things to get started about my ethnic background. I identify as a mixed race person of color. My dad's side of the family is half Native American from the Halawasapani tribe in North Carolina, half African American, descending from slavery roots from Liberia. The other half of my family is white, Scottish, immigrated to Nova Scotia and then down into Maine, where my mom lived. My dad was from Virginia. He moved up to Maine, met my mom. So that identity as being a mixed race person has definitely been a unique experience, because I feel like I'm fully a part of all the things, of all the different parts of my background, my identity, without actually being part. I'm like all of them and none of them at the same time. And so it's been this really unique experience. And people tend to look at me and label me as whatever is convenient for them. So some people look at me and they just put it in their minds that I'm whatever it's convenient for them. But I've received a lot of support in my life from all different backgrounds who support me for whatever reason. And I've also received discrimination from all the different backgrounds as well, and discrimination for ethnicities and religions that I have zero to do with. So it's been really interesting. But so, just to really dive in here, the first thing I'm going to do is go over some basic definitions and concepts, because having a shared understanding for the language and the concepts that we're talking about is absolutely essential for this conversation and for all the conversations we have in our organizations. Because we get into trouble because it's easy for everyone to arrive at a different understanding of what the word means. The word, like the word diversity or inclusion, means different things to different people. So if we can all establish shared language first, then that makes it makes our conversations way more productive. So that first definition is diversity: variety, difference, representation in a group, various facets of identity. So we're talking about race, gender, ethnicity, ability, both physical and mental, age, size, religion, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, political perspectives, etc. And another big point there is we're talking about facets of identity that exist outside the majority demographic. So that could mean different things depending on the rooms and the spaces that we're operating in. But we're talking about identities that are outside the majority demographic. Equity: providing access to opportunity relative to people's needs with consideration for historical and systemic barriers. Whereas equality refers to when all people are treated identically without consideration for those historical barriers or privileges. And so this infographic demonstrates that pretty clearly. On the equality side, it really just clearly illustrates that by giving everyone the exact same thing, that's not always really helpful. That does not always create access. Whereas equity, when we are providing access relative to what people need, that is far more effective. And in the bigger picture, taking into consideration the historical and systemic barriers that people face. I mean, without getting into the weeds here, when you just take a glance at the history of the United States, it's pretty clear that there are some groups that had advantage and opportunity, or more advantage and opportunity, whereas other groups faced adversity and were at disadvantage. And so given that, success isn't always defined by the work ethic of a community. There are other things that we need to consider. And when we work as nonprofits and we're there to support everyone, it's really important to understand that people don't all come from the same situation that goes back generationally and historically. So by looking at our services through that lens, it gives us a better way of addressing the issues, and helping people where they need help, and not just thinking that by just offering the same thing to everybody is going to be the most effective way to create access. Inclusion. Actions taken to include, accept, celebrate, and utilize unique strengths and facets of identity so that all feel welcomed, valued, and supported. Inclusion are the actions. It's the things we do to accept and include everyone, regardless of their identity. Belonging is a feeling. It's a feeling of security, support, and membership enforced by a sense of acceptance and respect for one's identity. It's the ability to stand out and fit in at the same time. And so a lot of when I'm talking about the work and I'm referring to it as DEIB, I'm adding that belonging into the DEI work because belonging is an essential piece of it all. It's one of those outcomes that we're really trying to create. Belonging, it's the ability to be yourself and be a valued member of the team at the same time. It gives people security and comfort. And that comfort allows people to take risks and push themselves and explore, adventure, create, and share. And it allows people to be part of something greater, right? And there's a lot of confidence and power in that. And it also allows people, it gives people the confidence to return to the thing and progress and grow and share. And so belonging is absolutely essential. It's an essential piece of doing this work. Accessibility is the quality of giving equitable access to everyone to gain the benefits of a system or entity. And it's also talking about compliance and functionality. So that could be making sure that whatever it is that we're doing, we're meeting ADA regulations, which could be something as simple as wheelchair access. Or I do a lot of work with outdoor sports and rec. And so that could be making sure that we have adaptive equipment that goes along to whatever the thing is that we're doing. So it's accessible to more people. And there's a lot of really cool programs out there that are offering adaptive equipment so everyone can get involved with all these amazing outdoor opportunities that we have around here. Another really important form of accessibility is language access. That is a topic that I deal with all the time that a lot of people don't necessarily think about, but it's really, it's essential. And so like in our area here in Bozeman and Belgrade, Big Sky and Livingston, we have this very large and steadily growing Spanish-speaking population that is doing so much of the essential work that allows our communities to function and grow. And so it is very easy to provide everyone with the language tools they need to be successful and do their job effectively and safely. Because sometimes it can be as simple as making sure, if we're talking about Spanish-speaking individuals, making sure that they understand the safety that needs to go into doing the job you just tasked them into. Because if an accident were to occur and they were never given the instructions and the safety info they needed to do that job safely, the liability falls on the employer. And so it's not just about, protecting our organizations from legal action. It's about helping people to stay safe and do their jobs effectively. And so Montana Language Services is a great organization out of Bozeman that I work with that has great language access tools to help reduce some of those barriers. Justice, we're talking about fairness, proactive reinforcement of policies, practices, attitudes, and actions that produce equitable power, access, opportunities, treatment, and outcomes for all. So we're talking about fairness when we talk about justice largely. So some of the basic concepts that go along with these things: diversity is reality, inclusion is an action, and inclusion is also a choice that we get to make every day. Are we including everyone with the thing that we're offering the community? Equity, belonging, accessibility, and justice is the outcome. Diversity is reality, inclusion is an action, and everything else is the outcome. And so as organizations, we need to be outcome driven. It's so easy to get stuck in the conversation aspect of this work. Our goals are to create outcomes and not sit around and talk forever about the things that we're going to try to do. And now the educational component and those internal conversations are essential and are the foundation to everything that is going to come after. But we need to be mindful of how much time we're spending on talking about the things and actually doing them. So we need to be outcome driven. Also, the terminology. I know a lot of people have done the work and have been doing this for years, and some people call it DEI, DEIB, JEDI, IDEA. Some of us are talking in terms of ESG, environmental, social governance, social justice, and whatever terms you decide to use, that's up to your organization. You workshop the language and do what makes sense. But what is important is that we're focused on the outcome and not necessarily the terminology that we're using. So I'll end there, but there are some basic definitions and some basic concepts. And so when I'm talking about the work here, let me start by telling you what I'm not talking about. That doesn't mean. And so here's a little snapshot from the past legislative session in Montana, where Senate Bill 222, also known as the Montana Individual Freedom Act, sought to ban training that might make state employees feel guilt, anguish, or other forms of psychological distress for historical injustices. Now, some DEI training might have that focus or that effect on people. When you really dive deep into the history of, that full experience of like the Native American, First Nations, Indigenous community, or African Americans, or women, or LGBTQ+ in the United States, it's hard not to feel something. But that is not the focus of my work or any other DEI consultants that I know. A lot of people jump on these calls just to argue the slides that are trying to, go back into some of those historical and systemic barriers I referenced early, but that is not in this presentation, and that is not a focus of the work I'm doing. Yes, that needs to be acknowledged, because without a clear understanding of why things are the way they are, we are not going to arrive at an actual realistic solution. So it's important that we do that. But let me get into what this work is. DEI work essentially makes sure our services and organizations are welcoming and accessible to everyone and not just some people. DEI work is educational training and program implementation to reduce prejudice and discrimination, facilitate positive group interaction, and help create a more supportive, welcoming, prosperous environment for everyone with a focus on supporting diversity. So that's really what it's all about, making sure that whatever it is that we're doing is accessible to everyone and not just some people. And so I know that organizations are already prioritizing that. But by taking a new look at what we're doing, we might be able to find ways to do the things more effectively. At the core of DEI work is systems change. We're assessing our current systems and looking for ways to improve them to promote fairness, opportunity, and prosperity for everyone. This is about systems change. Some of those systems are systems of belief, education, outreach, funding, collaboration, services, like social services in the community, resources, and metrics. Now, DEI work is not about trying to save everyone and bring people into the current systems. It's more about evaluating our current systems and looking for ways to make them better and get them more up to speed with the rapidly changing socio-cultural dynamics of our world today. Because the world is changing fast. Like everyone on here knows that. I know that. And our communities are changing really fast. You know, the rapid growth in the last 5 years has outpaced the growth of our support systems in place in our communities, social services and community programming. A lot changed. Wealth disparity grew. The demand for services outgrew the capacity to provide them. The barriers to access for all of our things that we provide, those barriers increased. And a lot of people got left behind. This is a picture I took right down the street from my house. You know, these neighborhoods are everywhere. And talking about how quickly our communities are changing. Last night, I was scrolling through Facebook, and one post that I saw was about how Bozeman is getting 4 new dog parks in subdivisions that just sprung out of the ground, was the terminology used. And so the next post was from HRDC, talking about a 2-year increase of 400 homeless people that were over the age of 55. 2-year increase of 400 people just over the age of 55. And so one post is talking about subdivisions springing out of the ground and the need to offer dog parks. And then the next was that the homeless numbers are just skyrocketing. And so that's a good look at how our communities are changing and how some of the systems we're operating on could be evaluated to perhaps work more effectively. Because what has been working, what worked 3, 5, 10 years ago, is probably becoming obsolete if it's not obsolete already. The world is changing. I'm about to throw out a lot of statistics here. Don't feel like you need to write this all down because you will get all of these things afterwards. But the 2020 US Census showed that 43% of the population are people of color. And that number is increasing steadily. Gen Z, ages 9 to 24, is the most diverse generation in the history of the United States. 48% people of color. And also 1 in 5 of Gen Zers identifies as LGBTQ. Now, so Gen Z ages 9 to 25, millennials age 25 to 40. By 2030, by the year 2030, Gen Z and millennials combined will make up approximately 70% of the workforce in our country. 94% of Gen Z and 87% of millennials currently expect companies to take a stance on social and environmental justice issues. 94% of Gen Z, 87% of millennials don't want companies to do this. They expect companies to engage in this work. 90% are more willing to engage with companies that do. Whether that engagement is buying a product, volunteering, working for an organization, the majority of the majority bases decisions on this work. Who is doing social and environmental justice work? It's more important than ever. In 2021, 20% of employees in the United States quit their jobs. That's 47 million people quit their jobs that year alone. Of that 47 million people, 57%, or wait, sorry. Okay, hold on. Numbers can confuse me sometimes. 47 million people quit their jobs. 57% of those people said that they felt disrespected at work. 58% of that 47 million took jobs that were lower paying than the jobs they left. And so that illustrates that being in a meaningful role has become more meaningful than a high-paying job to a lot of individuals who make up the majority of our workforce. Employees who feel included within their organizations are 3 times more likely than their peers to feel excited about their jobs and committed to the organization's mission. And 92% of people surveyed in some of these reports that I take from, 92% said employee culture has a huge impact on their intent to stay with their current employer. Now, you will get all these stats in the notes that come from this presentation. But it just goes to show how increasingly important this work is. And DEI work allows us to take a dynamic approach to solving dynamic issues. This work is not popular because it's trendy. It's popular because communities, organizations, and businesses realized that it's essential for the sustainability and the development of our organizations, businesses, and communities. Some of the other looks at those benefits are this work allows us to build crucial systems of support, enhance community development, which is largely measured by the quality of life, sustainability, growth, health and wellness opportunities available. It creates connections that strengthen community. We're investing in people who will become invested in their own communities. Like most everyone on this call works for a nonprofit that is supporting the community and investing their resources in supporting the community members. And by supporting everyone as best we can, those people that we're helping will become invested in the community and continue that cycle of supporting one another. This helps improve business and workplace culture, which based on those stats that I just threw out there is super important. Sustainable economic development. Also, organizations doing DEIB work have a business advantage over those that don't. Also, all these stats that I throw out there are basically coming from Deloitte, McKinsey and Company, Pew Research Center, Boston Consulting Group, and the US Department of Labor. It's not just some like magazine that threw together a good sounding buzzword article. These are coming from sources that this is what they do. But either way, so talking about that business advantage real quick, businesses doing DEI work are thought to have a 35% advantage in hiring, 70% more likely to capture new markets, 20% more likely to experience above average profitability, 19% higher revenue due to innovation. So I know those are business stats, and we're all working for nonprofits, but it still applies. Those numbers still absolutely apply to what we're doing. We need to understand what's going on so we can be as effective as possible. Specific to nonprofits, looking at our work through this lens of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging allows us to truly represent the community that we're supporting, find increased funding opportunities, which is huge, and increased engagement and support. So just to dive a little deeper into those three things, truly representing the community. By doing what we do and looking at it, our services through the DEI lens, it allows us to represent the needs of everyone within our scope of work, and not just some people, by addressing the barriers that traditionally have not had much focus. Nonprofits have a greater chance of developing more effective programs by including diverse voices and perspectives. You need diverse perspectives to get a clear understanding of the big picture, because diversity is reality. So here are just some images of some projects that I've been working on that aim to provide representation for everyone in the community, where we're hosting events that reflect all the cultures in the community and not just some of them, or providing outdoor sports and rec opportunities to everyone in the community, and not just like who's plugged into our social media and website and can read our flyer and already know what the sport's about and why it's valuable. We're addressing those barriers and making sure everyone can be a part of the thing. So I'm going to keep going here, but it allows us to truly represent the whole community and not just some. Now, here's a big one: increased funding opportunities. A lot of organizations are stuck in this rut where we don't have the resources to seek more resources, because we're just trying to do our thing and we're overwhelmed as is and don't have time to engage in this whole other scope of work. But when we do take a look at what's available, like I just looked, this is from 2 days ago. These numbers could be higher. Every time I look, these numbers are higher. But currently on montanagrantwatch.com, there's 112 social justice grants available for Montana nonprofits. Now, they're not all Montana funders. A lot of these are national funding opportunities, but Montana nonprofits are eligible. So 112 under the keyword search social justice. 326 grants available under the keyword search BIPOC, which stands for Black, Indigenous, and People of Color. Those numbers are huge. Also, DEI, according to a handful of studies, DEI is the #1 interest of the largest funding organizations in the country for the last few years. Funders are looking to support projects that are involved in this scope of work. So there's lots of funding available. Donors appreciate organizations that are being mindful of doing DEI work and its importance. It's such a huge topic. It's also really worth the investment in joining grant databases that you need to pay for. Grant database platforms like GrantStation and Foundation Directory Online. There's even more grants available there. So there's so much interest in supporting DEI projects. There's a ton of resources available. And so a lot of the work that I do as a consultant is I help organizations build capacity that don't have the capacity to build capacity. So I know, people approach me and they're like, we want to do this thing and we want to provide our services to more people, but we don't have the staff. We don't have the time. What do we do? And it's easy to go out and find grants for doing this work. And so I help people find grants and help them make a plan and receive grant money so they're able to hire another person, essentially, hire on more staff specifically to make sure that what they're offering is accessible to more people. And that in turn takes a ton of pressure off the rest of the organization who's already trying to do that, but there's grant money specifically out there. And also these grants pay for the consultant work as well, or the grant writer work. So I help organizations scale up, and at the end of the day, it didn't actually cost them anything because grants paid for the entire process. And now they have a new employee full-time and maybe one part-time. Their program has grown to serve 100 more people. And that's taken pressure off the rest of the staff, which allows people to not be so stressed out and swamped and working unpaid OT, and allows everyone to do their jobs better and our organizations to work more effectively. And people notice this. And doing this work increases engagement and support from all angles, whether that is having way more people show up to this great thing that you're offering, or this top picture middle, maybe you need 200 people to come out and volunteer to shovel off a soccer field. You want everybody showing up for that, not just some people. And this work isn't about trying to coax people to come volunteer to shovel off your soccer field. But when people see your organization's efforts in this space, they want to come out and help. Maybe that means scaling up your volunteers. On the far right here, this is from an organization that had never thought to reach out to high school kids to volunteer because they didn't think, they were under the assumption that high school kids didn't want to volunteer because they had tried and no one was coming. So I urge this organization to reframe that volunteer opportunity more in that lens of environmental justice and social justice. And a ton of people came out and they came back, they returned. Maybe it's having more people at the table representing all the different parts of your community when you're in a leadership strategic planning phase. Or maybe it's the donor dinner, right? People are interested and people are more willing to engage and support organizations that are doing this work. I know I'm running out of time here, so I will try to go through the rest of this quickly. Some efforts across our region. Belonging in Bozeman is the City of Bozeman's Equity and Inclusion initiative that's been going on for years. And in their words, the goal is to ensure that every resident, visitor, and City of Bozeman employee feels welcomed and valued and can thrive no matter their race, identity, or life circumstance. They spent years trying to determine the indicators that define equity. I believe they're available publicly. The City of Bozeman has a great website for people to engage. I believe it's called Engage Bozeman. But they have whole departments within the City of Bozeman doing this work. Belonging in Big Sky is an initiative that I lead in Big Sky through the Big Sky Chamber of Commerce. And the goal there is supporting the diverse communities that live and work in Big Sky through advocating for social services and programming, providing educational opportunities about the what, why, and how of DEI work, and also more events that help to reflect and celebrate the diversity of Big Sky culture. And in the last year, we have done a lot of things. And one of those pictures back here, bottom left, the African Student Association of MSU came up and did this great performance. And to the right of that, there was a country line dance performance. And by the end of this event, The African Student Association was out there line dancing with the Country Western organization. And, you know, and the the American Indian Council of MSU had people who were singing along with it. And it was like, and Sizzling Salsa was there. And it was like to see everyone coming together with people that they did not really anticipate coming together with, learning about each other, gaining respect for these other cultures and individuals. It was like community building in real time. It was beautiful. It gets me so excited. Also, to keep going here, the city of Billings and the Billings Chamber of Commerce has a huge DEI program called the DEI Network, where they understand the importance of doing this work, but they also are giving their businesses the tools to be more effective and more successful. They've been doing this for years, not just like the other day. They've been doing this for years. They have an amazing program. Also, Missoula, Boise, Park City, Jackson, Wyoming, all these communities. It's the city working with the community foundations, creating the framework for these community-wide initiatives. Again, not because it's trendy, but because people realize how important doing this work was for the long-term success of our communities. This work allows us to do what's good for people and what's good for our organizations and communities at the same time. It's a no-brainer, but many of our organizations just haven't viewed what we're doing through this lens. Some of us have, and it's great that we can all come together and no matter where we're at, keep working to make our services more accessible, our programs more inclusive. All these communities have similarities to the Livingston area. They're all Western towns that have this major draw of outdoor sports and recreation, major impact of tourism on our economy, people coming and going seasonally, destination for a lot of COVID refugees. All these communities are changing faster than people can comprehend. So anything we can do to give us the advantage to keep pace with these changes, we need to do. So I've gone over so much of what the work is and why it's important. I'm going to spend another 10 minutes here talking about how we do this. Again, all this stuff is going to be provided to you in this great toolkit so you can dive in when you want. But a quick look at how. These are the basic elements of a DEI initiative. When your organization is like, okay, so what do we do? This is the general process. It starts with education, right? That shared language, the what, why, and how this work relates to our organization. Then we take a high-level assessment of things like our workplace culture, community needs, the desired impact we want to have, and what our vision is of an equitable and inclusive organization. So once we have a sense of where we're at and where we want to go, we can all sit around as an organization and create agreed goals, define some roles of who's going to do what, systems of accountability, and empower leaders to really go out and engage in this work. And we can form a committee that's made of internal staff members and also external partners, if possible. Like maybe that's just pulling in people that you already work with from other organizations to come in an hour or two a month and to just hear your thoughts and help give you a different perspective on what your goals and plan is. But we form a committee and then we go out. And the next thing is to undergo a more in-depth analysis of our strengths, our weaknesses, the potential impact we could have, make some priorities, and establish some baseline data. So we know where we're starting at again and where we want to go. We can take a look at company policy and procedure. That's a big one, because we want to be doing the work for within our organizations. So we want to create an inclusive culture at our organization, and also for people we are providing services for. We're constantly doing both of those things. And so that's where the policy and procedure really comes into play, is what are we doing internally to support this? Not just trying to provide it for everyone else. What are we doing for our staff members? We can workshop the framework, which is that mission, vision, values, goals, strategic plan. Where are we going to get funding from? Who are we going to partner with? How are we going to measure this? That is when a consultant or someone in your company who has experience doing this work can be really effective, because this workshop and the framework thing can take years or it can take months. And so again, we don't want to get stuck talking about doing the work and feeling good about all the conversations we're having. We can do that and take action at the same time. But the framework is essential, because we need an outline to follow as we do this, so we can be as efficient and effective as possible. Gain consensus, and then we get into the implementation, where we're implementing our strategic plan. Action to create impact, right? Where the rubber meets the road, as many people say. Creating partnerships that are relevant. That's where a lot of the systems work comes into play, creating effective systems, because we don't all have to be doing all the things. We just need to coordinate who's doing what out there in the community. We generally have the people with the money, the people with the thing we're trying to offer, and the people with the people that we're trying to give access to. We don't need to do all of it. We need to coordinate those entities so we can all be as effective and efficient as possible. Maintain inclusive workplace culture, and measuring our progress, and applying consistency and commitment to what it is that we're doing. So that's the basic outline of the how, and that is its own workshop down the road. And so some of the resources that you're going to get after this, you're going to get a toolkit that serves as a starting point for nonprofits that I created, and I've used at a lot of different organizations. And it really is just a starting point. This isn't the end all of what we're going to do, but it contains those elements of a DEIB initiative. So you know about what the process is going to look like. The more detailed version of that last slide. You're going to get a 42-point DEIB assessment checklist. Just going down this list of, are we doing this? Are we taking this into consideration? Of DEIB within our organization. Some of the things won't apply to you, but a lot of it will. And so at the end of this, it will really just help you get a sense of what you're doing well and some potential areas that you could engage with, which will also help you when you're like, okay, we do want to do this work and go out and get a grant. That assessment checklist will help you assess like where you can be focused on to begin with. It'll also contain 4 sample survey questions to assess a sense of belonging within your organization. I think it's actually just 3 questions that I can run by you really quick. A lot of people don't quite know what to ask, and everyone's got survey fatigue, and what do we do? So you tack these 3 questions on to your existing survey. And it's like, does your employee feel comfortable having difficult conversations with their coworkers? Does your employee feel comfortable bringing difficult conversations to leadership? And do people feel like they can be their authentic self at work comfortably? So, and then I think the fourth question is just, open response. Is there anything that you'd like to share with us about your experience at work as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging? A lot of times those numbers come back a lot lower than people think when their employees are comfortable enough to be honest. Now, that doesn't mean you're doing a bad job. It just means that you've got room for improvement, which is fantastic. The language access compliance for employers did not end up in the package, but that is something that I can work on getting to you all, or you could just look up Montana Language Services. I believe it's on there. And there's also a one-pager of DEIB statistics and studies on the value of and importance of this work. It has a whole list of statistics with links to a lot of different studies. And so that will be a resource for you all to, one, just have a crystal clear understanding of the value, and also be able to dig in and do your own research as it specifically relates to what it is you're doing. I know that Park County Community Foundation will also be offering a help desk, and I will let them chime in at the end with more details about that. But essentially that will be, I will be available to answer any questions you want for a specific window of time, which it can be anything from here's what we're doing, how can we improve it? Or a lot of people want to know about the language they're using. And so with this presentation that we just did, I could talk about one sentence of all of these things for hours. So I was really trying to throw a little bit of everything out there. And so I hope that people found this valuable. Doing this work is so meaningful and to so many people, and far more meaningful than a lot of us realize. We all have things we can do as individuals, organizations, and communities to broaden our perspective and uplift the world around us. So approaching what we do through this lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion work gives us another way to look at what we're doing and assess what we're doing and look for ways to do our thing more effectively. I know a lot of people are already doing this, and I applaud you. A lot of people are just getting started, and I applaud you as well. But if we can all just work together and keep thinking about ways to uplift the world around us that impact everyone and not just some people, it's going to have an incredible impact across our communities and organizations.